Welcome to the Stripping the Dipping podcast. You're joined by a dynamic duo of F1 Black and AMG Dens. And we're coming like Mario and Luigi. We're coming like MJ and Scottie Pippen. We're coming like Snoop Dogg and Weed. We're coming like Muhammad Ali and Tyson. We're coming like a Rasta man with reggae music. We're coming like chicken and chips with extra dip. Because today we got that energy and we got that sauce. Because it's time for the 8 p.m. Debrief Cookout. Oh yeah. And on today's menu, listen, people, FIA are getting peppered for their selective choice of following health and safety procedures. Goatifi gets absolutely curried by Nick de Vries. We review the triple header recently, the five-way IndyCar finale fight, and we take an honest conversation and look into sports versus politics, as all of the Premier League matches in England were cancelled at the weekend in light of a very untimely and tragic tragedy. Without further ado, let me segue my co-host in F1 Black. Bro, how's it going?
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm brilliant. I'm good. I'm ready to go. And yeah, we've what a Sunday it was for us. For those that don't know, there's a few of us that watch the IndyCar. We kind of follow it. I'm crying in European privilege because sometimes I have to stay up to like 10 p.m. But yeah, I'm in a good mood today. We watched that Laguna Seca Classic, and it rescued the weekend. I can't say the same about F1, but I'm like ecstatic to be cooking some of this stuff. Ecstatic. And the final point about sport and politics. Well, we'll see. We'll see what we have to say. It's an interesting one because not all sport was cancelled. So it's like football versus the Queen. I don't know. But
Very
no,
true.
good to have you. Good to have you with us, Mr. Dens, and not Mr. Chimney. So tell me, Dens, how have you been over the last few days?
Yeah, man. I echo everything that you said earlier as well there, Black. Just, the Sunday was going a bit kind of meek after seeing how the race had ended. And, we're going to touch on that very, very imminently. But then, like you mentioned as well, I think the IndyCar finale really saved the day because when you have five drivers going at it for a title and the governing body is not going to intervene, it makes for some spectacular racing. And that's what we saw around Laguna Seca on Sunday, unlike some other series, which is apparently supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport, but I find it to be the pinnacle of fraud these days. But actually, to stop teasing the people, Black, we should probably get into it, man. So the FIA are getting peppered once again. Do you want to elaborate on why, how, and this the shared kind of consensus amongst us in the community?
Yeah, I mean it's been a long weekend for the FIA because also don't forget that we started the weekend with Porsche and Red Bull announcing that they wouldn't be doing a deal. So that's one fewer manufacturer that um, they thought they were going to get on the books. So already came into the weekend badly. And then Sunday morning, before we even get to the Formula One, there's Formula Three. There's a crash. I think it's after the second Lesmo. I could be wrong. And basically it brings out the red flag. And then once they've red flagged, they give the championship leader a 5 second penalty. Must have been for something he did in the race, like track limits or something like that. One of his maneuvers, Victor Martin. And then as soon as they give him a 5 second penalty, they go, "Oh, the race won't be restarted." And so Victor Martin himself said, "I thought they were going to do me like they did Lewis Hamilton." Like that's almost a direct quote. Thankfully for Victor, he still won the championship even with that 5 second penalty added on. But as is the case with these red flag procedures, they managed to avoid the last couple of laps and they went back a couple of laps. Something that we're told by Formula One media that's impossible. So that's before we even get to the F1, right? Then we get to the F1. The race is going swimmingly. Lewis Hamilton goes, and we'll talk about this when we review the triple header, goes from literally last after turn one up to P5 on merit in a boat, like the second slowest car on the grid at the fastest track in the season. So Lewis Hamilton nailing it. And then, of course, with a few laps to go, the safety car needs to come out. So Daniel Ricciardo, I think his engine gave up, or he was told to stop the car in between the two Lesmos. He does that. They bring the safety car out, but it gets confused. The safety car, I think it picks up. Well, first of all, it took ages to come out or to catch up with the leaders. Then it picked up Russell, And Russell was like, I'm not going past this. That looks like it's got yellow lights on. The team were like, go past, go past. Anyway, by the time the field had sort of amassed behind the safety car, they closed the race. They had to finish the race behind it. Two things the FIA sort of did wrong or did right here. The first thing they did wrong, I don't know if you saw this footage, Dans, this morning. There's footage of Formula One cars basically driving. It's okay at safety car speeds, but that's still quite fast past a crane that's like on the circuit. So first of all, that just fills me with dread thinking back to Suzuka 2014. So safety, seems like it's it doesn't feel like it's a top priority or the lessons have been learned. Second point, and this is what I think got people riled up, is you get all of the media and all of the punditry going, oh, isn't it boring? Isn't it boring that they finished behind the safety car? But I guess they followed the rules. So your boy Lewis Hamilton is quoted after the race as saying, yeah, they followed the rules. The one time they didn't follow the rules, we all know when that was. So rightly, the FIA is being cooked for its selective application of safety and its selective application of the rules. Dens, it's been a bad few years for the FIA, but surely you thought they couldn't get any worse, and they've bottled it this weekend. What do you think?
Oh, Black, they're this the gift that keeps giving, man. They don't stop with these howlers and L's they hold week in and week out, And shout out to my uncle Shaka David as well, because he reminded me, he said, "Do not let this episode pass, Dent, without giving the FIA their customary L." So of course I'd be obliged to do that, Uncle Shaka. Thank you for that. And yeah, just another disappointing response from them. It's a huge slap in the face to Lewis Hamilton and the fans of the sport, because as you mentioned as well correctly, Black, they follow the procedure correctly this time, but then it almost triggers your feelings and almost like it makes you question why this procedure wasn't correctly followed back in Abu Dhabi, in 2021. So there's lots of questions I think it raises rather than it answers. As you mentioned there as well, I mean, they applied the safety car, fair enough. And one of the points that was taken from this whole debacle was you can actually have a race finish under a safety car, which wasn't the first and probably will not be the last. But also, like you also correctly mentioned there too, man, like ultimately as well, there was a very dangerous situation there. You had a really big obstacle on the circuit, in the form of like a utility vehicle retrieving a stricken car. Yes, whilst they're at safety car speeds, if a car locks up, if somebody's brakes or fail, like as we nearly saw with Perez, or if somebody's accelerator gets jammed, you've got an obstacle like that on the circuit, and there's not many places you can go to take avoiding action. So again, very questionable actions by the FIA. And just generally as well, like I was just surprised because, if you're going to do something, like most of the times you'd see people stick by their guns. But the mere fact that, like you said, they selectively, pick and choose the moments when they feel the rules are going to be applicable and when they don't want to apply the rules because of their certain favoritisms towards certain teams or drivers, it makes you just question their integrity, which I think is the key element to take away from it as well. Now, what we haven't mentioned so far in this amazing episode is that we've got a special guest as well. He's from our Twitter community as well. So I'd like to introduce Ahmed inside here. Ahmed, bro, firstly of all, how you doing? And secondly of all, whilst we're kind of like already starting this full course meal, man, on this cookout, what's your take been on the FIA's response in relation to that last couple of laps at Monza? Think we might be having some technical issues with Ahmed, so I'm sure Georgina will probably drop him a message just to see if he can hear us, and and like we can see if we can hear him as well. In the meantime, Black, I'm gonna pass the ball back to you as well, man. Yeah, this really shocking and very disappointing at the end of the day, man. And just is there any hope that they'll learn and that actually their actions in Monza, whilst they still weren't the best, that at least they did something they probably should have done in Abu Dhabi?
I mean, in Abu Dhabi, they should have finished behind the safety car, or if they really, really wanted to push it, they could have done one racing lap 58, but leaving the lap cars in place. I think, maybe it was never in doubt whether or not the FIA knew its own rules, because I think it was a Grand Prix at the Nürburgring or something like that, a year, 2020, let's say. You've got Massey quoted as saying, well, I had to finish the race under the safety car because I didn't have enough time to unlap the car. So I'm not convinced that F1 ever forgot its rules, right? But here's the problem. There's an implication, both in F1 media and in some of the statements that you hear from Dominicali and you hear from Mohammed bin Sulayem, the president of the FIA, that the rules are there and the race directions there also for entertainment. And for me, that just feels wrong. So first and foremost, they should be there for safety. And secondly, they should be there to allow a level playing field, essentially. So people breaking the rules should be punished. And broadly speaking, the rules should be designed to keep people safe. So yeah, the FIA appears incapable of doing that. Something I've been saying, really reluctantly over the last year or so, since we had a lot of the shenanigans, is historically it's taken quite a bad incident for the FIA to learn lessons as we go through. And I really hope that it doesn't take another driver suffering a huge injury or worse for the FIA to get his act together. But actually, it sounds like we have Ahmed on the line now. I want to throw over to you. How are you? And welcome to the show. It's fantastic to have you.
Thank you very much. I hope you guys this time can hear me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly. Denz, you can hear, yeah?
Yeah, I can hear Ahmed as well, man. It's great to hear his voice too.
Well, thank you guys for having me first. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you, Georgina, Dance, and F1 Black. Sorry, I don't know the name behind the account. But thank you for having me. I mean, what happened yesterday, it was, I think it was a bit of a mess. And by a mess, I mean not having one race lap, but we also the way how things got handled. And I think at this point and at this stage and how far advanced Formula One is, Formula One should really have a proper discussion with all the organizers on every track they go. Now, since we're comparing Abu Dhabi to what happened yesterday, here's one thing I did kind of respect about Michael Massey, that on every track, a week before the venue arrives there, he takes the plane, jumps there, check everything out, corner by corner, safety, inch by inch. That is one thing he did. I can give him the credit for. And we have noticed in some many races, where something happens, he's right away calling the red flag. As much as we hated to see that red flag because we were just annoyed by it, but it was doing the right thing, not wasting laps behind safety car or virtual safety car when things are not being solved. So I think what the FIA should be doing now, they should really have proper talks with every organizers around the world we go to, because these kind of stuff, and this is a historic track like Monza, you cannot be having a truck like that backing up in the middle of a straight with no runoffs, and there's Formula One cars driving 100 kilometers an hour. But in general, I just believe, as Toto said, this time they properly followed the rules. But the one thing that was for me intriguing is how bad is the communication between the FIA and between the stewards and between the marshals on the ground. It must be so bad that you didn't know if this should be a safety car or virtual safety car or a red flag at all. So on that part, I think if that's what you guys were discussing, that's my 2 cents on it, to be honest. But in terms of the race itself, I mean, we kind of now live in an era where, we have a one-team dominance. And, from the start of the race, we were I was kind of excited because I'm finally, we're going to have a bit of a mix, which is we're going to have a mix of the front, slower cars, except of the Ferrari, of course, with Charles. And then you have Max P7, and then you have Paris P13, you have Sainz P17. Kind of gives a taste to P18, like kind of gives a good mix of a taste on the grid. You want to see some overtakes, and you want to see how people will handle the DRS train. But as we all saw by Ascari in lap 1, Max was already P3, and you already know it's done and dusted from there. Sorry for taking long.
No, that was perfect. I mean, it's a great segue into the race. I don't know about you guys, but, and I think the commentary said this, I just knew that Max Verstappen was going to win. And I don't think even, let's think back to when Mercedes had like dominant years. 2016 was probably like, or 2014, 2 hugely dominant years. I think if you put them starting 7th, they'd still need to work hard, and their teammate, still had a chance. And, Vettel, when he was the opposition, still had a big chance as well. So, yeah, I don't know, Dens, when you were watching the race or before the start of the race, who did you think was going to win? Because for me, I just sort of had a sense Max was going to win no matter what.
Yeah, man, and I think the kind of betting man that's quite safe would probably say the same thing as well there, Black. To be fair, I don't know. I had just a twinkle in my eye, and it wasn't the eye drops, unfortunately. It was actually, that maybe Ferrari and the Tifosi would get one up, in their home garden, because again, it seems that Ferrari with this F175, they can tune the car and get the maximum performance from it in qualifying conditions, but then when it comes to the race, ultimately we see that they don't have just that edge of race pace over the Red Bull. And then what was quite alarming as well, is that Ferrari kind of came with a revised rear wing package, so you could see that they were running very low downforce, whereas with the Red Bull, for example, the RB18, they kind of stuck with a traditional rear wing, which kind of tells me already that the natural balance of that RB18 is towards or geared towards top line speed, and they have more flexibility in the different packages and different components they can put on that car to fine tune it for the characteristics of each track. So it was very unfortunate, and I think maybe had the the race been red flagged, as a kind of secondary benefit, safety comes first, but the secondary benefit of the entertainment, it would have been interesting to see how Max and obviously as well Charles would go racing side by side with each other, because it'd be so interesting just to see those two just go head to head, with only a couple of laps, and just with the kind of state of the championship as well. Does Charles kind of like try and get the result for Ferrari when he needs to? Is it a case maybe where Charles or maybe Max on the other hand backs out and we see maybe a different side of Max because he's so comfortable in the championship now with the lead he's been afforded? So yeah, it would have been nice to see, but ultimately we did kind of get stuck up with another stinker that was overshadowed by a lot of the FIA's recent applications of the rules and such.
Yeah, I mean, so how, Ahmed, I'll bring you back in if it works. I mean, did you see, like, ahead of the race, did you see Leclerc winning it? Did you think he had a chance? And do you think, because we know that Leclerc came in early because of the VSC, they tried to kind of do a early one stop. Do you think that on a normal strategy, being able to fight on track, that Leclerc had more of a chance?
You see, the thing is, when we came to FP2 and FP3, Charles and Max, they were a bit close with each other. Although Charles was a bit faster in Sector 2, however, Max was faster on Sector 1 and 3. So it's basically, it gives off the mix of we could have it close. Just like in Jeddah 2021, when Mercedes had the advantage around Sector 2 and 3, the fast corners and the straight line speed. However, the Red Bull had the advantage around the twisty corners in Sector 1. But when we came to the actual race, and what we learned from this season is, no matter how much you're going to look into the race space and race simulations on the practices and all that, we could jump into the race and everything could look different. Like the car that people expected to be fast could look seemingly slower, or it could have the same pace, but just the other car became a bit faster. Maybe they found something a little bit extra at the end of the night, and they worked on it, and they just put it out there on the race, and it worked. So, but so I was expecting to be close, but the moment when I saw Max in lap 4 closing that quick to George Russell, I was like, yeah, he's gonna win that. And I think coming to this level right now, where Max have started multiple races away from pole position and from the first of the grid, except for Zandvoort, it's just inevitable with the speed and the balance and the tire that RB18 has, that he's gonna lose any race. So it's only a matter if actually somehow Ferrari will try to get their car to become faster, which is they did in the race in Monza. They were a bit faster. They opened up their engine aggressively in Monza, but they were a little bit conservative. They don't want to go all the way in, and then they have an engine issue and a DNF. But I don't think anybody is going to now be doing anything more with their cars. Maybe something a little, but not too much, because we already know that by Singapore or by Suzuka, the championship will be decided, basically.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I agree with you. 6 races left. The gap in the title is 116 points. And so the gap between Verstappen and Leclerc, if it was in the championship, that gap would be currently P7, with a shot of catching Lewis Hamilton. So yeah, it's a big margin at the moment. I mean, it wasn't all bad news this weekend because, it was bad news, I guess, for the guy with appendicitis. Alex Albon on the Saturday morning had to pull out because of suspected appendicitis, and he's receiving treatment, and I think he's okay. But it meant that Nick De Vries, who we've seen a lot on camera, in the garage, or I think he even did a practice for Aston Martin the other race. He jumped in at very little notice, and when all the penalties shook out, ended up 8th on the grid. And he now heads Latifi in the World Championship because he scored 2 points. Dens, before we start currying Goatifi, what about on the positive side? Were you impressed by Mr. F2 and FE World Champion jumping into that car at short notice?
Well, bro, first of all, Blag, man, have you got any roti or dumplings for me? Because Nick De Vries absolutely cooked Latifi, boy. It was a absolutely well and seasoned cookings, and I couldn't be prouder of Nick, because again, he's a driver that's been so criminally overlooked, in his racing career. It's really sad, because he was a McLaren Academy driver. Things didn't quite work out for him at McLaren. Then obviously he's done some sports car racing and had success with that too. He then goes over to Formula E on the Toto Wolff's wing, and we know that Toto has a really good eye for talent, because look at what's happened with Valtteri Bottas. Look at what's happening with Nick De Vries. Look what's happened with George Russell. So again, with Nick, he's just had to basically be a journeyman, build his own way. And it's been amazing just to see his progression, just to see how versatile he is. And also, he's such a bright and intelligent, very witty, very respectful young man as well. And you could see it's everybody's reaction at the end of the race as well. All of the drivers, Gasly, Lewis, even Max went up to give him a hug, because he's such a likable character and just, one of the real ones. So no, very, very impressed with him, to basically on short notice jump from what people need to remember, Aston Martin, which has the same engine, but other than that couldn't be anything different, jumps into a completely different car, has to learn all the procedures, all the engineers, all the commands, all the steering. Even the Williams has a very unique steering wheel, because unlike the other teams, Williams still live in 2012 and have a dashboard mounted on the chassis, and then a wheel, just a normal conventional wheel, which they say is for saving weight. So again, all of these buttons, features, commands, processes, he has to kind of keep in the back of his head like a computer. And to do that, and then to successfully out-qualify, roast Tifi, as we're gonna call him now, and then just to put the final nail in Latifi's coffin, to score points in the one and only opportunity you get. Yeah, just hats off, hats off, hats off, hats off to Nick de Vries. I know Nicky Lauda would be taking off his hat. I know Frank Williams, just whatever kind of like hope he had left in the dynasty, the great dynasty that he created. I know just that is a glimmer of hope for Williams in the future, because if they can pinch Nick de Vries, they can get him into that seat. They're going to be scoring points, and points make prizes, and prizes equal development. So, there's only so much you can really say. But yeah, before I hand back to you and the ultimate grilling of roast Tifi, just Capito, if you're listening, man, please, 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 you don't need any more reasons or excuses now to sign off Latifi's departure. This is basically, in footballing terms, an open goal, for Williams, if they're a serious team, to make a solid move, a statement, of a move, and to get a driver that's always deserved, a seat, and he's still not too old. He can still do it, and it just shows. So yeah, but I'll hand it back to you on this one, Black.
So I've got bars. I don't know if you know this, but like I'm a seasoned rapper, right? So I'm just gonna. These are my bars. You ready? 16, 16, 16, 14, 16, 15, 15, 16, 12, 18, 18, 18, 15. It all raps. Why does it rap? Why does it rhyme? Because those are the results of Nicholas Latifi this season. What an embarrassment. What an embarrassment. When he got 12, that was the British Grand Prix. And how many cars retired? One, two,
Bro, the
three,
third
four,
of the
five,
grid had
six.
retired.
Yeah, 6 cars was retired. So the lowest place finisher was in 14th, and that was the Alfa Romeo of Joe. So he's gone, and then the guy behind him was Lance Stroll, who I think had damage. So yeah, like this guy is basically more often than not 15th or worse. He's only scored better than 15th on 2 occasions this season. Like that just tells you this is just a critique on facts. This is a critique on facts. He's not good enough. Look, Albon is not tearing up the charts because the Williams is not that good this season. But he's got some points finishes, yeah? He's got 3 points finishes. He's got some 11ths. He's got some 12ths. This guy, Latifi, is just... Until the British Grand Prix, right? This is how embarrassing it is, right? Until the British Grand Prix, which was round, 10? Yeah. Latifi was behind Nico Hulkenberg because by virtue of the fact Nico Hulkenberg had scored a 12th place in Saudi Arabia before... and that was in the when he was blocking out Vettel's seat while Vettel wasn't well. So you were behind for 10 races, a guy that only did 2 races and didn't even finish in the points. That's how bad you are. So, like, I'm actually putting out of my mind the blue flag ignoring at Monaco. I'm even forgetting him crashing all on his own after saying he got dirt on his tyres in Abu Dhabi, right? And people have some conspiracy theories. Do you know what's even more insulting to Latifi? It's not a conspiracy. It's just that bad. He just crashed into the wall on his own. Like, no offense, but there are only 20 seats in the premier class of single-seater racing in the world. And that's 5% you're wasting. You really need, like, if you're Williams and you're a serious team, you'll say, look, Safina, we're really grateful for your money. Appreciate it. We'll pay you back the money to the end of the season. We'll just have a white and blue car for the rest of the season. We'll put De Vries in it. I feel like I'm not even cooking him even enough for how bad he's been this season.
I'll add some seasoning, Black.
Go for it. Bro, add some seasoning, some sauce.
Bro, how do you finish 21st in a 20 driver like series? Are you nuts? Like
full time.
Bro, this guy's finished. Latifi, he's not even in mud anymore. This guy's in quicksand. The guy's in quicksand. Like, I can't believe it. This, disastrous monstrosity that has been his career. and it's not in my nature, Black. It's not in my nature,
No,
Ahmed.
same.
It's not in my nature to be mean to people or, to take it out on people. I genuinely try and see the good in people. But, bruh, this guy, week in, week out, this is just terrible, and the thing is, it doesn't have to be this way, guys, because we've seen. Look at the situation with Haas. They had Mazepin. They gave him a chance. He wasn't good enough. You know, you've seen the difference in how the team operates now that they've got Kevin Magnussen, a seasoned driver, professional, can get a job done. And how that's elevated the team from being a laughing stock, spinning at the back of the grid week in and week out, actually to one of just the normal midfielders on a good day, So yeah, just going back to my original point, man. Like, if Williams are a serious team, if they really care about the legacy that Sir Frank Williams has built, Williams used to be great. Williams, not to go political, Williams is a bit like Brexit. Like, when the old English people say, yeah, we used to build stuff. That was Williams. Williams was just like, one guy like had a team as like a private owner, and he's taking on the big dogs like Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, Renault, and look what they've become now because everything's about finances, and making books balance. They lost the essence and the passion of racing and, the standards of what a successful team should be. So, this is just an eye opener. I don't think, to a lot of us, it's news. He had this coming, but again, for just for Nick De Vries, to make that statement shows you a lot. And Ahmed, before we close the Tifi's coffin, bro, I want you to give him his final eulogy.
There's one Arabic joke we have. Like, if you really want to basically try and to slander someone, you'll tell him, even if you were the only student in your class, you'll still finish second. So this is the kind of case with Latifi, with Nico Hulkenberg, and who else was there? Yeah, and literally Nick De Vries. Those guys haven't raced as much as him, and yet still he's behind them. Kind of, I'd say sad, judging by the performance he gave last year. Until the final races, he wasn't there at all. But yeah, I think this season is a testament that Canadians have never been ashamed of themselves more than the way how Latifi and Lance Stroll been representing them, both of them. And the topping of the chair, like just the topping of the cake at the end of the day is just like what happened between them in Australia, if anybody remembers, when they both came together. And it's like a fault that you can give it to both of them. One, for Latifi not really lifting off the speed and just basically braking and avoiding that collision by himself, even though he sees that Lance Stroll is about to just ram into him. And yeah, but in general, Williams as a team, they've been in a pickle themselves. And if anybody remembers, 2014, 15, and 16, Williams were the third fastest car on the grid. They were generally the third fastest car on the grid. And I think in 2015, they finished ahead of Red Bull. And that is a great result for a team that has been far, far away from any winning or anything has to do with being on top of the grid. In 2014, they finished ahead of Ferrari in a first season of the new regulations. So, but then they didn't take advantage of how good they came from 2013, how bad they were in 2013, and they just rocketed up to being the third fastest car on the grid for 3 consecutive seasons, and they just basically dropped the ball. And Williams became the team that we know now. Just a team where Mercedes, they dropped their drivers to take one of the seats, or paid drivers would just come along and be taking one of those seats. And we have a lot of examples. We have Sergei Sirotkin, we have Lance Stroll, and then you have, Lance Stroll was doing well in the Williams for a kid of that age. And then you have, who else? Then you have Nicholas Latifi. So it's pretty much it's haven't been great for them for years now. But I think what Nick Vries did right now, he have literally saved Williams from an embarrassment. And why am I saying that? Because now any sponsors will be like, oh, so the issue is just one guy. It's not the team. They have a car that is capable to score points, and if they develop this car even more, those two drivers, they're gonna do much better than what this guy is doing, which is Latifi. So in that case, if you're gonna probably have if you're gonna have both Nick and Albon on the team, when the opportunity presents itself, you have two drivers capable of scoring points. If it's not, you're gonna try your best just to be keeping up with the midfield. In case of a safety car or something, try to take advantage of taking at least a point or two. So just basically how exactly it was between Russell and Latifi last season when Latifi was performing. So, but yeah, I think this is it for him. But however, from what I knew or from what I know, that Nick De Vries might end up going to Alpine. So there's basically three teams now arguing about him. And what I don't understand, I'm really confused, like, is why Williams, they're like, we just have to think about it. There's others. And what you are the one most needed to this guy. And you're going to let him go to another team? It's your loss at the end of the day. So I just hope that Williams really do pick the kid and just move on with their future.
I feel bad, right? I feel really bad because I don't want to kick a guy, like it's like picking on the small kid in class. But I just want to bring one fact to the attention before we close this case, right? And then we'll go back to Dens for the next order of proceedings. So I was looking at Latifi's stats, right? And people might get mistaken for thinking he's a rookie. He's like, I think it is in his third season. But do you know how? Let me tell you a driver that he has more Formula One starts than, right? And then you're going to be suddenly like, this is finished. Nicholas Latifi, this is a fact. Nicholas Latifi has more Formula One Grand Prix starts than Juan Manuel Fangio.
Jesus.
Unbelievable. To say that. 5-time world champion who actually just took a year out because, the regs just were like, oh, no, I don't like these regulations. And he's got fewer starts than Latifi. He's won 5 championships. I feel like I don't even know where Latifi goes next. But, yeah, as you say, Ahmed, I don't know. Like, Williams need to just snap De Vries up if they can and have 2 serious drivers. But there we are. Dens, back to you in the studio.
I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah. I hope so too, guys. I hope so too. But on a brighter note, and in a completely different series of motorsport, where the governing body tend to actually govern by the rules of the sport, should I say, and that the racing can get quite tasty. Man, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the IndyCar season finale fight this Sunday that just took place at Laguna Seca. And just to set the scene, because I know that there's many people out there that maybe don't check IndyCar. I know that this is predominantly an F1 podcast, but I think for a lot of people, if you're really into racing, you want to see guys go wheel to wheel like gladiators. You want to see fair racing. You don't want a toxic environment and you want to see competitive driving, then IndyCar is the perfect place for you because essentially, just to break it down for the listeners, we went to the finale. We went to Laguna Seca, a very historic circuit as well in its own nature. Essentially, there were 5 drivers that could mathematically still win the championship, which is nuts compared to obviously F1, where only one guy is going to win the championship now. So you've got that 5 different drivers. One of them was an ex-Formula One driver in their own right, in Marcus Ericsson. The driving at Laguna Seca, which hasn't been resurfaced in over like 10 years. So the baking hot California heat is roasting the surface of the track away. And because the track is so worn, they predicted that they were actually going to do a 4-stop race, which is absolutely crazy. In Formula One, we're accustomed to seeing boring 1-stop races. But in IndyCar, we got a 4-stop race. And you got to bear in mind also, IndyCars pit for fuel as well. So there's an element of strategy that comes into play as well. And then as for race day, it was just absolutely fantastic because you had Willpower on pole. He just literally matched history by beating Mario Andretti's pole record of 68 poles in IndyCar, which again is crazy. And just to top that off as well, you had Scott Dixon trying to come through the pack. You had Scott McLaughlin basically trying to help out his Penske brethren. And then on top of that as well, obviously the fan favorite, Joseph Newgarden, after making a mistake at the corkscrew and getting screwed over, no pun intended, making his way all the way from last place, 25th place on the grid, to P2. And even with that in mind, he still missed out on the championship. And the worthy winner was crowned as Will Power. So I'm going to throw it to Black for his response. And then on top of that, I guess we could ask Ahmed as well, has he checked much IndyCar racing, and with the current situation in Formula One, is it a sport maybe you'd consider in the future when it comes back next season? I'll hand over to you, Black.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll jump in. Yeah, so I mean, it was a fascinating race to watch. A couple of things if you don't watch IndyCar already. So they refuel during the race, which adds an element of strategy because it means, if you have refueled on a particular lap, then your range means you're going to have to stop for tires and fuel at a particular time. And it doesn't. Some cars might have to do a quick stop at the end, or some cars that you think, they're in 18th. What are they going to? Why are they even competing for the lead? They'll suddenly come through when everyone else has to stop. So it's really fascinating to watch. It's unpredictable, and yeah, the coverage is much more uplifting. So yesterday, Will Power, who I think they majored on his age. He's 41 years of age, from New Zealand, became a two-time champion. So he'd won the championship back in 2014, something like that. And he only won one race this season, which was at Detroit. But he was so consistent. So many podiums through the season, lots of thirds, a few seconds, a couple of seconds. And it was third again, and third was enough to win the championship. But further down the order, there were some fantastic performances. So you mentioned Scott McLaughlin coming all the way through the pack. Not Scott McLaughlin, Joseph Newgarden coming all the way through the pack. Starting second to last, coming to second. Alex Palou, who we've joked about this year, he was the reigning champion. He's a guy from Spain. He's at Chip Ganassi Racing, who are one of the top teams. He's been there for a good few decades. He won the race, and he won the race. So just imagine this, different engines, but the same chassis. He was sort of well in the lead, 25, 30 seconds, something like that in the lead by the end. So that pace that he displayed, and they had a caution, so they had a safety car in the middle of the race. He was just head and shoulders on pace faster than the rest of the field. It was his first win of the season. He's with a team that he's actively announced that he was going to leave, and then they've said, actually, no, you're staying. So the politics behind the scenes, small p, probably wasn't perfect for him, and he's absolutely smashed it. So it was a fantastic race. It was great to see Palou get a win on the board. It was fantastic, I think, for Power to get another championship. He was chuffed. He's such a nice guy, and it was good for Newgarden to drive through the field and show that. But yeah, I would implore anyone that, even if you still love Formula One, and personally, I'm watching Lewis Hamilton. I kind of watch his race, just following his position. Maybe watch a little bit at the front. I'm not enamored with F1, but even if you are enamored with F1 and you love it, give IndyCar a chance next season when it starts off. So it's mainly street circuits, road circuits. People think it's a bit like NASCAR and they're mainly on ovals. There's only 4 ovals, or at least that was this season. So give it a go. So fantastic final day of racing. 5 guys in it to win it, and some familiar names if you've watched Formula One in the past. So Ahmed, I don't know if you've caught any IndyCar through the years, or if it's something you've watched a little bit before.
Believe it or not, this season was my first ever season I watched IndyCar. And,
nice.
I was in Toronto when they were racing in Toronto. And I got to meet some of the guys in person. I got to meet Pato. I got to meet Felix. I got to meet Will Power, Colton Herta, and of course Grosjean. which that guy's a whole story alone. And yeah, I got to meet some guys. To be honest, it was interesting to walk around the paddock in Indy to see how things run over there, which is much cheaper than Formula One, of course, like miles cheaper. And yeah, I mean, I like the ending that there's 5 people in a title contention. And from what I understand, the aerodynamic packages on IndyCar, all the team have the same. The only different thing is the side pods when it comes down to the airflow or the air gaps, like could be different from a car to another. That I noticed personally, visually seen it myself with the car, but the chassis, the engines, and all that, they're all technically the same. So one of the reasons why I think the racing is always close over there than it would be on Formula One. But we also know that those cars are about 10% cheaper, or not 10%, it's about 70% cheaper than a Formula One car, or even more. But yeah, it was exciting, and to see how fast those cars are on straight line speed, cornering, you can tell the difference how slow they are compared to a Formula One car. But yeah, I mean, Roman Grosjean, the guy was a little bit odd. I'm not gonna lie to you. Uh, I was standing by Andretti, just looking at the cars because I think they do have 4 cars. And as I'm standing there, just looking, and here he comes off the trailer truck, and he looks pissed, like his face looks mad. I'm like, oh, somebody's angry. And then people start calling him Roman, Roman. He turns, smile at the people, wave at them, and then look again in front of him and turns back to the mad face mode. And I'm like, what is up with this guy? And funny enough, what happened, I met Colton Herta. So after he was done with his press, he came out, spoke to him. I'm not going to lie to you. I was lying all over the paddock for one reason. The reason why I was lying, I was saying, hey guys, I came all the way from Saudi Arabia to see you when I'm already staying in Toronto. So you have to say something to catch their attention, to stop like, oh, really? So I caught Colton Hurt, and I was like, it's a pleasure to meet you. I like the guy, by the way, because I like his style of racing. And I was like, would we ever see you in Formula One? He was like, why not? And he was smiling. So we took the picture. And as I said that, are we ever going to see in Formula One? Who is passing behind us? And I didn't notice. Roman Grosjean. And he turns as he walks away, look at us, and give me the dirtiest look I've ever seen in my life, as if this guy knows me in person. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is scary. Like the guy has to calm down, otherwise he's gonna destroy his racing career, focusing on this dilly-dally, and this guy said and that guy said. So I think I kind of figured somehow one of the reasons why Roman Grosjean is really not consistent with his performance, because he really gets affected by what could be said about him or what's been said anywhere by a fan, by a teammate, or by a team principal, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I spotted that. It's been really interesting because, Dens has his own particular nickname for Grosjean.
Crispy Nugget.
When Grosjean came into the sport, so it was like less than a year after the crash at Bahrain. And yeah, like his popularity was really high. He started to put in some really good performances. So I think in this first season, he wasn't running the ovals. He was running the road courses. I think he came second at the Indy sort of street circuit behind, I want to say it was Rinus VK, something like that. And it looked like it was only a matter of time before he kind of started to put a run together and win his first race. I think he got a second near the beginning of this season. And then since then, his results have just sort of tailed off. So yeah, you could be right, Ahmed, that there's something sort of psychological there, or there's something there that means he started looking like he was going to be a contender and just fell away. But yeah, Dens, tell me, we joke about this, but like, where was your guy Pato? Like, what's happened to him towards the end of this season? He's sort of, some might say, fallen off. What's happened? What's happened?
What happened to your boy Rossi? What happened to your boy Rossi?
Yeah,
And not
he's just resting.
not
He's just resting.
not Valentino
He's
Rossi
resting.
either, bro.
He's
resting
resting.
where, bro? What in
He's
Latifi's handbag?
He's building up. He's
Building up what, bro?
he's getting ready to go to McLaren. He's building up his deposit.
Bro, to get smoked by Pato Sauce Blood.
We're going to see it next year. We're going to see it.
But you know what, Black there. Let me actually add to what Ahmed said as well, because I think Ahmed's given us some really amazing like insight, and I'm very privileged and honored that he's come on to this episode as well. Because talking about Romain Grosjean, it's just ironic. Again, we're talking about comparing IndyCar to Formula One. We know in Formula One, he had this beast with a lot of drivers. He wasn't really liked. He had this kind of weird thing for talking Lewis's name all the time. He's so obsessed with Lewis, and then he goes over to IndyCar, and again, you see him getting into scraps with, Alexander Rossi. You see him getting into scraps with Newgarden, which he would win that fight. You see him even getting into scraps with his good old, exactly. You then see him getting into scraps with his long rivaled friend Marcus Ericsson. And again, this is why I implore people, go and give IndyCar a try, man, because there was like a beef between Marcus Ericsson and Crispy Nugget as well, Romain Grosjean, and even that was funny because it kind of took to social media. Loads of the drivers were kind of throwing their 10 pence in as well, and kind of like adding more fire to the pot. But generally, the thing I like with IndyCar, and I think you mentioned it as well, Black, and obviously Ahmed could probably attest to this, there's still a level of respect between the competitors. There's no kind of like toxicity exhibited between one team to the other. It's seen kind of as one big family, one fraternity. The mere fact that they say prayers together before they jump in the car and race, shows you that there's a kind of unitedness and like a passion, to build a legacy together, and to not kick people when they're down. And even the commentators, whilst they're honest, if Jimmy Johnson's having a crash, they'll call it out. If Romain Grosjean's like elbowed somebody off the track and crashed them, they call it out. But at the same time, it never goes beyond like these narratives we see, or disrespectful kind of things we see with Sky Sports F1 and the way they treat Lewis, in IndyCar. They're so respectful. And man, I'm not even an emotional person, but when I saw that moment between Mario Andretti, like, congratulating Will Power and the two of them embracing and having a hug and talking about the good old days and how it is to drive an IndyCar now, I wish that's how Formula One was. And I wish the elder drivers like, Jackie Stewart and all of these guys had more respect for Lewis, the same way that, obviously Andretti has for Will Power. But we could only dream, man. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to leave you guys the final note on IndyCar before we come to the final topic and debate. But yeah, for me, great season, 5-star season. Would recommend anybody to go and watch IndyCar next season. It's great. You got variety of street circuits, conventional race circuits, and ovals. So there's a bit of variety for everyone. And as Ahmed talked about as well, you don't have to sell one of your organs to go to a race either. You can go there, and the drivers actually want to speak to you, which I think is really embracing and one way to engage the fans as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was just nice, easy going. There was no, like, you don't feel like even walking around the paddock over there that the journalists or any of these people are like, oh yeah, oh my God, these guys look like so firm. Oh, there's securities around them or any of that. If there is any people that I met around, I mean, before people have on Twitter, I think before the Canadian Grand Prix, people they were just slamming at me over something I said about Vettel. And you know what? I'm gonna go right ahead and say it. Like at the beginning or the start of the season, I have mentioned something. Look, let's take. I'm sorry, I'm gonna draft you guys for 10 seconds away from Formula One, just to bring you guys back to the topic of Formula One. Mm-hmm. If we take guys like Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi, look at their age. They are at 38, 36, and they're still performing at a high level. Not the same as when they were young, but however, they're still working hard and they're still doing things that maybe talents right now at the age of 23 doing, and they are at that age and they're doing it well. And this is a sport that requires you to run, to be physically fit, and all that. Formula One requires you to be physically fit as well. Why is that? Because if I am a team owner and I'm paying you 25 to 22 million a year, I want to see in that car, I want to see you physically fit. I want to see you smashing those numbers. Why am I giving you that 22 or 25 million a year? Because you are four-time world champion. You are a legend in the sport. You're not supposed to look like a man who is in his 50s. That's what I said. People didn't like the comment, didn't take it well. I understand F1 Twitter, it's always at a war zone or a civil war. That is okay. So when I was in Canada, and by the way, keep in mind I have nothing against Vettel. I like the guy, and and if you see the years of dominance of the likes of, and I'm talking about the recent years that we've seen, Michael Schumacher, Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, it always feels there's a dense power behind it. Like it feels like strong, it feels powerful. Max just begun that phase. That's if Mercedes or Ferrari they don't get their things together, then Max will be running with that. But still, Max, even in his first year, doesn't feel that of dominance. Like, still doesn't feel that dense yet. Doesn't feel like, oh yeah, this guy's powerfully scary. You know, like. But the days of Lewis and Vettel and Michael Schumacher, you would be sitting behind TV like, please, somebody stop this guy. Like, somebody do something about him. Well, on the other hand, in 2022, you still feel like, oh, I think somebody can still pull it, or at least pull a race win away from him or something like that. And looking by the things how teams are, this 2022 is a step in, learning step for all the teams. And I think by next year, Mercedes knows they cannot afford doing the same mistakes they did right now because of all the money lying behind that sponsorships they have. They have one of the biggest sponsorships on the grid, and they cannot afford losing it to come P2 on the constructors next season. So, P3 on the constructors. So they know that very well. And especially the headquarters of Mercedes, they're not going to be playing games with Toto if they see things going this way, even though he brought them an 8 consecutive constructor championships, something never been done before in Formula One to have that run for 8 years. So I kind of got myself lost in this one. So yeah, Vettel, basically, I saw him in Canada. Very nice guy. Took a picture with the guy, and I got slammed. Aren't you the same guy who said Vettel is this and that? But yeah, that's me criticizing him as an athlete. I'm not criticizing him as a person. I do not judge any driver as a person. If the person does something to me in person, just like what Roman Grosjean did to me in person, we all felt sympathy for him after Bahrain. But after seeing the way how he's acting with people, the way how he acted with me, I was like, oh, okay, this guy has some issues. I don't know what is it, but I hope he better deals with it in person. Same thing as, I may not like Max and some of his comments and all that stuff, like when it comes down to, sometimes he doesn't say some cool stuff, but I have a lot of respect to him for the level he's racing at. This year, maybe last year, he was just a lot of under pressure, and he had some wild driving in some races. But this year, yeah, he's just cruising perfectly, like no mistakes whatsoever. So you gotta have to give him that as an athlete. So as a person or as a personality, I would not judge him because we don't know the guy in real life how it is. And people who met him, they say he's a nice, chill, timid kid. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, in general, there are people I've seen in F1 in Canada in the paddock walk and all that. They were nice to people, to the fans and all that. I got to meet Will Buxton in person, face to face, privately in a bar, chilling, talking. He's a very nice guy, talkative guy. The same Will Buxton you see on TV is literally the same guy you will see in real life. That is Will Buxton. He's not different. He doesn't act different. And one of the funny interactions we had, his friend introduced me to him. He was like, oh yeah, this is Ahmed. He comes from Jeddah. And he was like, oh yeah, we're from Jeddah. No shit. Sorry, excuse my language.
It's okay, bro.
And I was like, oh yeah, I am from Jeddah. He's like, wow, nice. I love that truck, by the way. And I was like, and the way how they organize it, the general admission areas, how fantastic that place. And I was like, at first second I thought, I was like, are you saying that because I'm here from Jeddah, or do you mean it for real? So, and he was laughing. He was like, no. He's like, look, 2 years, what happened so far in Jeddah, and how far that track is. It looks like it's been there for 10 years. Imagine they have a 15 years contract, how far this thing is going to go over there. And I was like, you know what, makes sense. But in general, he was a nice, chill guy. Like, he is one of the real people, or you would say the same person you see on TV. If you ever come across that man, put that in your head, that he is exactly the same guy on TV. He acts the same way. He's no different. Sorry for dragging you guys in our long conversation.
No, honestly, Ahmed, that's fine, and it's good that we bring you on and we hear these stories, because when it's like, me and Black, obviously we discuss these things, but then, it's amazing to get like people like you as well that actually go to the
Thank you.
events, and we can get these experiences firsthand and hear these things, and I agree with pretty much everything you said there too. I mean, we all have our opinions at the end of the day, and usually when we criticize people or when we say stuff, it's usually to do with how they do their job, as opposed to insulting them as a person. And I think, as you mentioned too, if people do it in a respectful way, at least, or they're not going about it and being like, malicious or like violent or like being threatening, then I think, it shouldn't really be that like dramatic, and I think that's the thing I find reassuring about this IndyCar and this the way that formula is and how the fans engage and follow it too. And actually, to bring us on to our final topic before we get on to the honorable shout outs for this weekend or this week's debrief cookout. Ahmed, you gave me a good segue. It's almost like you have my script, man, when you're talking about football and you're talking about, these iconic footballers as well, in terms of, Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, the greats. And in the UK, this Thursday, regardless of how people see it, a significant thing happened in the country's history. One of the longest reigning monarchs in British history passed away. Queen Elizabeth II passed away at the age of 96. It was a very strange time for the country, because everybody, I guess within the last kind of span of 100 years knows of the Queen. They see her face on the money. She does all of these public acts of services, I guess, and to know that she's no longer here, it's just one of those things where it makes you think, like, what will society in that aspect be like culturally, and how people will be affected. So, we saw a lot of things on Twitter. I'm not going to say it's good or bad, because everybody has their own way of reacting to grief or celebrating, stuff as well. So there's that. But where I wanted to bring both you guys in is in Formula One, when Lewis was campaigning for human rights, and talking about, racism and discrimination and stuff like that, people said, oh, well, there should be no place for politics in sports. However, when the Queen of England passes away, they stop all of the football games. They literally cancelled all of the football games, and there was no Premier League football on at the weekend. And I understand that that's a British thing, because the Premier League is like an English league, and obviously other sports continued, like football, American football, Formula One, cricket, and such things. But yeah, I just wanted to bring you guys in and get your thoughts on that, from a sports versus politics point of view, and whether or not you guys agree with like football being cancelled, or postponed, for something like this. So I'll start with Black.
Yeah,
Can
I
I be
mean,
honest?
oh, go on, Ahmed. Go on, you tell me.
Oh, sorry.
You tell me.
Go ahead first. I'm sorry. Go.
Oh, no. Okay, well, I think, as far as I'm aware, right, and I could be wrong, I think the Premier League took its own decision, so I could be wrong. So I feel like it's a bit like Formula One, right? The Italian Grand Prix happened on the weekend, and they had a moment of silence for the head of state of another country before the race. And they kind of chose to do that. So as far as I'm aware, it's all voluntary. My view on all this, there are people with really strong views, as you say, online. I don't feel strongly either way. I don't get any, there's some people that somehow got energy from, the Queen passing away. It's like, well, that kind of doesn't, to me, doesn't reflect massively well on those people and their mental stability, but, that's them. Yeah, I think people will mark it in the way that they want to. That's a personal choice. It seems to me, and I don't want to sound cynical, but it seems to me the Premier League made a decision that, in terms of reputation, and maybe in terms of perception, that it was better for them to cancel for this weekend. I suspect they'll be back. I don't know if it will be this weekend coming up, but yeah, I mean, each to their own. I think there were other sports. We watched the Formula One. There was a Great North Run. There was sort of cricket. I think the US Open is going on. So there's all other sports. But yeah, that's my milk toast sitting on the fence view. Ahmed, I'm far more excited to hear what you think about this.
Oof, man, what I'm gonna start actually. Look, Dan's mentioned something very important about sport and politics in general, and you as one F1 blog, you mentioned some really good points, and here's what I can say. Sport mixes with politics when the arrows are not pointed at us. But sport doesn't mix with politics when the arrows are actually pointed at us, if you know what I mean. Meaning, let's say, for example, when now we have the World Cup coming, by the way, in December, as we all know. So now that the World Cup is coming in December, and we understand there was some question raised about whether it's a good idea to host it in the country. Well, it's been too late, my friend. You guys gave them the World Cup in 2010 to host. You're not going to come and pull it out after almost 12 years of building hotels and stadiums to take it away from them. Like, that is too little too late. So, and the questions were raised about, human rights, the LGBT rights and all that. And I understand every country that have these rights have the right to ask these questions to countries that they don't. My point is, when that was raised and spoken about, I'm like, I respect that because they want to ask their questions, and I respect also that the Qataris from their side, they actually have answered those questions. Like, hey, like, we never said no to anyone. Like, you all can come, do what you want, do what you please. Just respect our culture. We're not asking anything more than that. I was like, fair. So there's a mutual point, the standing point in the middle where both sides can stand in the middle, be like, let's stand on here. Agreed on that, let's move on. But like, for example, I remember in UK when, I think 6 months ago when Israel, and I don't like to get into this whole Israel-Palestine thing, but when Israel bombed Gaza, which is a small city, with a huge wall cornering it around the sea so people can't get in or out. They don't have airports. They don't have anything. Not even a port. They just have small fishing boats. In one night, they bombed the whole neighborhoods, killing over 700 civilians. And some of the teams or the fans in Europe, either in England, either in Scotland, either in so many European fans, they raised the Palestinian flag in basically solidarity with the people who lost their lives in one night of bombing. And the flags, they were stripped away from them. And I'm like, that should be just the simplest thing for you to know, that politics, we support politics and sport when it's benefiting us and benefiting our agenda, and we don't support it when it's against our agenda. And that's the reality of everywhere around the world. Don't let anybody fool you and tell you it works, it does not work. It's been in the sport for a very long time now, and it will be like that. And you will always see two narratives about it in the sports. And that's pretty much my take on it. And about the passing of the Queen, yeah, I get it. I've seen there have been some mad jokes about that, and it wasn't. Some of the jokes, they were just straight up disrespectful. But in terms of postponing the sport in UK but not the rest of the world, I think that's very normal. Like for example, when our king dies back home, like Bahrain, UAE, Qatar, all these countries they postpone everything for 3 days because we're almost like neighbors. We're like basically European unions. We do postpone everything in every country, any leader, so we do that. But I understand like if the rest of the world doesn't want to basically lower their flags or do whatever they want to do, because you know what, it's not like a matter that involves their country. So if they want to just send condolences, that's good. Other than that, it's not important. But yeah, some people took it very, very serious about that, and I don't think it's an issue. So at the end of the day, whoever is mourning the death of the queen, it's their choice if that's the way how they feel, and if they don't, they don't. And I'm speaking on that because judging by my experience living in London and Bournemouth for over a year and a half, so I can already tell the mixture of the British communities and how they are.
Yep, I think that's a really well articulated point, Ahmed. And again, you've come in clutch on this episode, bro, because you've given us the truth, but you've said it in a way as well that I think everybody, like all reasonable people, will be able to understand and to relate to as well. Because yeah, I like it makes no sense me even like repeating it in my own way, but I agree. Like on one aspect, I understand that the royal family, they're not the cleanest family, and there's a lot of skeletons that have come out in most recent times. If I was to give people examples, you could talk about the colonialization, of certain continents and countries in those continents. You could talk about Prince Andrew, being basically
Yeah,
protected
yeah,
for stuff like that. You can understand why there's a disconnect between modern day society and something that is like traditional, like the royal family. But at the same time, like you said as well, Ahmed, and also Blag as well, to be fair, I think there's a line where you still have to be human and it's still good to treat people how you would like to be treated. So
exactly.
I'm not in that camp either, of like making too many jokes or like going too far with it. Although I understand, where some people's frustration, anger, resentment, it could originate and stem from as well. And I can't take that away from those people either. They're entitled to feel that way too. So but I think it was good that we had this conversation as well because it's something in the back of my head, and I was like, it's something which I think a lot of other podcasters might overlook or might not want to touch because it's almost a gray area. But on stripping the dipping, most stuff we're trying not to get cancelled, but most stuff, is we will
Some
talk
things you
about it.
can't dodge. Some things you can't dodge.
Exactly that, man. And as long as you do it, I think in a professional and respectful manner, then I think that's sometimes better than just ignoring it almost as if it doesn't exist at all. So to put it back on a positive note, guys, because we're gonna wrap this episode up before Georgina takes away my bonus supply of ice cream. We've got to nominate somebody for honorable shout out of the week, and that's the thing, man. Like, I'm to put forward my nominations, and I'd be keen to kind of hear your guys' nominations as well. We had Willpower winning the IndyCar Championship. Black said he only won one race, and yet consistency was so key to him putting together this campaign. Bubba Wallace, the black NASCAR driver, won the cup race at the weekend as well. We know that he goes through his his adversity and struggles racing in a predominantly southern sport. So big shout out to him. And also I was gonna say Felipe Drogovic, man, my Brazilian king. He finally actually, secured the F2 championship with a dominant lead, and commiserations to Theo Pocher, which I think are parts of the season put up a good fight too. But ultimately, Felipe Drogovic was this class of the field. Sensational drive throughout the entire season. Now he's been also signed with a new deal at Aston Martin as a development driver for the F1 team. So great news for him as well. But yeah, guys, who would you nominate as well for honorable shout out of the week that's just passed?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Georgina and F1 Black. And I hope to be with you guys next time.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. But before you go as well, Ahmed, man, who would you say is like your driver of the day, star of the week? Who would you say like impressed you or did a good performance this week?
In Formula One or in every sport or every category?
Man, I'll let you pick, man. I'll let you pick.
To be honest, I wanted to give Lewis Hamilton the driver of the day for what he did in Monza with that, what I'd like to call a silver arrow around the corners, but a silver boat on the straight line speed. but but honestly, Nick DeVries deserves it because first of all, a guy who is not physically prepared to take all those G forces for the course of a full race, and yet still gets into the points. P9 in his first race, in a car was supposed to be the slowest on the grid. Add on top of that, you can tell how much it affected him when he couldn't even come out of the car. I don't know if you guys saw that because that's how much those G-force affected. So, yeah, I will give it to Nick DeVries, and I hope to see the guy doing well, or maybe in the future in Mercedes after Lewis Hamilton gets a champion and hangs off the gloves.
Yep, good shout there, Ahmed. And Blag, who are you voting for like your star of the week?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to give a heartfelt congratulations to Karun Chandok. No, wait, I'm only joking.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. The past is the past, Mr. Chandok. Yeah, thanks. So no, I'm gonna shout out a guy who was on the podcast we only released it a few days ago. So Miles Rowe. We didn't shout him out last weekend, but he went into the final sort of weekend of the US F2000 Championship. So for those that don't know, that is the I guess the equivalent of like Formula 3, Formula 4, maybe in the US. So then it goes the Pro Series, the Pro 2000 Series, and then it goes out to Indy Lights, which some of you have heard of, and then it's IndyCar. So he was leading that championship. He had some really bad luck in the last three races. It was a triple header in Portland, supporting the IndyCar last weekend. He was basically driven off track in the first race. In the second race, I think he and his teammate had a coming together on the start-finish straight at the beginning, and then finally he was avoiding another guy locking up and basically incurred some damage. And it was honestly the best drive I've ever seen. He came out of the pit maybe 15th, 16th, and a bit like Lewis Hamilton, came all the way up to something like P5 in a spec series with like finite tire life, and he almost won that championship. He got P2. I think he's happy with like P2. Obviously, he's a winner at heart. He won't get the kind of full ride scholarship into the next series next year. So I really hope that he's got a good backing in next season. But he's my shout out. I want to spread the word about this guy because Miles Rowe, the first black guy to win an IndyCar sanctioned event last season, he came so close and he's going up and going places, and he's a lovely guy as well. So he's my honorable mention before we close up. Dens, back to you.
Man, again, great shout out as well for Miles as well. Big shout out to Miles to you, man. Star of the future. Really proud of you as well, bro. And just keep up the impeccable work, man. You know, like it's amazing. And even like a little junior like me doing a bit of sim racing and esports competitions, or even trying to do some go-karting with the big boys, it's so tough. People really need to realize that, you know, this is not just like a 9 to 5 job, or, you know, that's something that you can just like wake up and do one day. The amount of practice, time, dedication, focus, precision, skill involved, you know, in winning any of these competitions, and the heart and resilience, you know, is a huge thing, especially for the younger generation of drivers as well. So big shout out to Miles, and thank you for coming onto the podcast as well. I hope to meet with you sometime as well, bro, because I didn't get to be there, unfortunately. But yeah, it's been an amazing cookout, man. I think we touched on everything nicely. Unfortunately, you know, there's no racing now for a couple of weeks, so we got to find something to keep ourselves all busy with. You know, can't continue to cook Latifi because we've charcoaled him. We've literally barbecued him on a meze. So yeah, but I actually wanted to shout out Ahmed as well, man. Thank you for joining us on this episode on such short notice. It was a pleasure, and we need you back on future episodes. And Ahmed, where can they find you as well, listeners, man? We want you to shout out your socials.
Oh man, thank you very much. I mean, you can find me on Twitter, or you can find me on Instagram as Aviation Worldwide. These are my only two socials. Like you can find my Aviation Worldwide Instagram account on the bio of my Twitter, and that's pretty much it. That's me.
Hey, Ahmed, man, you're the guy. You're the guy, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And yeah, guys, it's been another sensational 8 p.m. debrief cookout, with the dynamic duo, of course, of AMG Dents and Mr. Hammer Hammer, aka the actual secret agent 007 Black Hair, and then our boy as well, Ahmed, one of the greatest as well in the community as well, man. Great guy, and I'm really, really touched as well that he's able to share some of his amazing stories with us too. So yeah, Black, any final words from you?
No, just to say, Ahmed, it's been a pleasure. We're looking forward to having you back. You mentioned you're in London. We've got to go and get a neat burger or something. We've got to make it happen. We could do it live. Yeah,
we can do it. I don't mind that at all. Anytime you guys want, just name the time and the date.
Brilliant. With Stripping the Dipping, we'll be reviewing neat burgers in a location to be determined. But no, yeah, nothing more to say other than, yeah, maybe it's time for a Sunday slow jam, Dens. I don't know. What do you think? Coming up soon.
A little bit of Marvin Gaye, some Luther Vandross.
Exactly.
Oh man, yeah. Oh, it's nice. It's nice, man. Well, guys, on that brilliant note that I actually sung in key, whilst Georgina tries to find things to frame me on, I'm gonna end it right there. But guys, it's been a great episode as always. All our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Make sure as well that you guys keep your eyes peeled because soon we'll be releasing the questions as part of our summer series quiz where we'll be doing a giveaway. So make sure you stay peeled for that. And yeah, guys, this is part of our community. Thank you week in, week out for your support. For your guidance, for your constructive feedback as well, for your interactions. We're continuing to grow as a platform and try and reach out, to more and more people because that's the art of what we're trying to develop here. And our great founder, Georgina, the incredible work that she does. So big shout out to the boss lady, although she owes me some ice cream. But on that note, it's been your boy AMG Dens, F1 Black, and the boy Ahmed on Stripping the Dipping 8 p.m. debrief cookout. Make sure that you hit a like, make sure you retweet, make sure you do everything from the algorithms, get them nice and calculated, unlike the Ferrari strategy. And until next time, peace. We're out.